All right, let's dive into one of life's absolute biggest questions. And we're going to use a whole decade of mind-bending science to get to the real truth about money and happiness.
I mean, it's a question we've all kicked around, right? Does having more money actually make you happier? And if it does, is there a magic number? How much do you really need?
For more than a decade, science seemed to have this super specific, almost weirdly precise answer. This number, $75,000 a year, it became totally famous as the secret income level for peak happiness. But you know what? It turns out that's not the whole story. It's not even close. The real answer is way more complex and honestly, a whole lot more fascinating.
So to really get what's going on, we've got to go back to the beginning. Let's talk about the study that put this whole idea on the map in the first place. So back in 2010, you've got this Nobel Prize winner, Daniel Kahneman, and his colleague Angus Deaton. They basically dropped a bombshell with this huge study. I mean, they surveyed almost 500,000 people in the US to figure out the real link between money and how we feel. And they're the ones who gave us this idea of a happiness plateau. And this quote right here, this is the key to everything. They found that a high income buys life satisfaction, but not necessarily happiness. And you might be thinking, wait a second, aren't those the same thing? Well, as it turns out, no, not at all.
And that's the whole secret. The researchers were super smart about this. They realized happiness isn't just one big blob. They actually split it into two very different categories. So on one side, you have your day-to-day emotional well-being. You can think of this like your daily emotional weather. Are you feeling joy, stress, or sadness right now? Then on the other side, you've got life evaluation. This is more like your life's overall climate. When you step back and look at the big picture, how satisfied are you? They're two totally different things.
Okay, and this is it. This is the chart that made that $75,000 number famous. Look at this, your overall life evaluation, the climate. It just keeps on climbing the more money you make. No big surprise there. But look at that other line. Your day-to-day feelings, the weather. It shoots up for a bit and then it just flatlines, right around that 75K mark. After that, more money doesn't make your day-to-day any better. So for more than 10 years, that was pretty much the final word. The science was settled, or so we thought. That is, until the original author, Kahneman himself, teamed up with another researcher who had found completely different data, and they decided to tackle the whole question again, together.
And then, bam, in 2023, their new collaboration gets published and it pretty much flips the entire script on what we thought we knew.
And this is the part I think is so cool. Instead of having this big academic feud over who was right, these researchers with opposite findings did something amazing. They called it an adversarial collaboration. They literally worked together to find the real truth. I mean, that's how science is supposed to work. So, the big question is, what did they find? Was the happiness plateau real? Was it a myth? What's the actual deal? Well, it turns out the answer is, it depends. For the least happy 20% of people, yeah, the plateau is totally real. But for most of us, that middle 60%, there is no plateau. Happiness just keeps going up with income. And get this, for the happiest 20% of people, their happiness actually accelerates after they hit $100,000. Wild, right? Okay, so this totally complicates that simple question of how much money do you need? Which of course leads us to a different and maybe even more powerful question. What if it's not just about how much money you have, but about what you choose to value? And to dig into this, researchers ran a really clever study. They found over 1,000 students right as they were graduating from college, a massive life transition, and they decided to follow them to see what would really predict their happiness down the line. So, right before they all went out into the real world, they were asked a simple but really profound question. What's more important to you, time or money? And the results were pretty clear. A solid majority, 62%, said time. Now, fast forward 1 year. They're all in their new careers, their new lives, and the results were just striking. The students who had said they valued time over money weren't just a little bit happier, they were significantly more satisfied with their lives overall. So let's connect the dots here. If more money isn't a guarantee for more happiness, and valuing time seems to be a much better bet, then why do so many of us get so stuck chasing that next dollar, that next raise? Well, there's a very famous psychological trap that explains this perfectly. It's called the hedonic treadmill. It's this idea that we humans are just incredible at adapting to new things. You get a raise, you buy a new car, whatever it is. You feel great for a little while, and then that feeling just fades. You get used to it, and your happiness level returns right back to where it started. And this cycle is just relentless, isn't it? You achieve a goal, you get that little rush of happiness, but then you adapt, you get used to your new normal, and boom, before you know it, you're right back to striving for the next milestone, absolutely convinced that that one will be the one that finally makes you happy for good. All right, so let's tie this all together. What have we learned? First, that famous $75,000 happiness plateau, it really only applies to a small, already unhappy group of people. For most of us, happiness does keep rising with income, but and this is a huge but, the effect isn't actually all that strong. Which brings us to the biggest takeaway, your mindset. Specifically, choosing to prioritize your time over just chasing more money. That seems to be the real game changer for your well-being.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. When you really look at your own life and the choices you're making, which path are you on? The one that leads to more money in your bank account, or the one that leads to more control over your time? Because the science suggests that your answer to that question will probably shape your happiness far more than you think.